In the cruel silence of my father's study, I stood like a ghost, scentless, voiceless, a daughter born defective in a world where strength was everything. The silver treaty scroll lay unfurled between us, my name inked in blood at the bottom, a sacrifice disguised as diplomacy. "You should be grateful," my father said, refusing to meet my eyes. "Alpha King Kalen specifically requested you." The words cut deeper than claws. What kind of monster demanded the broken daughter of his enemy? What kind of father surrendered her without protest? Tomorrow, I would be handed to the Butcher King of Blackcrest, the wolf who had slaughtered his own father for power, whose name mothers whispered to frighten disobedient pups. I would be mate to a man I was bred to hate, property to a kingdom that despised mine. I touched the hollow of my throat where a claiming bite would soon mark me as his. What twisted fate had brought me here? Unable to shift, unable to run, unable to choose. They thought me weak because I couldn't transform, because my wolf slumbered silent within me. But they would learn what I had always known. Sometimes the greatest power lies in what remains hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to emerge. The Butcher King wanted a treaty bride. He would get a queen instead. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The silver handcuffs around my wrists felt like a mockery. Their intricate engravings, wolves running beneath a full moon, were almost beautiful, if not for what they represented. My complete surrender. "Don't fidget," my father hissed, his voice low enough that only my shifter ears could catch it. "Remember what's at stake," as if I could forget. The peace of 2 kingdoms, the lives of thousands, all resting on my shoulders, or more accurately, on my impending marriage to the most feared Alpha King in the Western Territories. I stared straight ahead as the grand doors of Blackcrest Palace swung open. My home for the foreseeable future, my prison. The thought sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the biting mountain air. "Alpha King Randall of Silver Hollow and his daughter, Lady Serena," announced a stern-faced beta at the door, his voice echoing through the cavernous throne room. Every eye turned to us as we walked forward. I kept my gaze lowered, just as I'd been instructed. Show submission. Show weakness. Give them no reason to think you're a threat. It wasn't difficult. I'd spent my entire life being reminded of my worthlessness. The wolf-born who couldn't shift. The Alpha's daughter without a scent. Defective. Broken. An embarrassment to my bloodline. And now, a peace offering. "Randall," a deep voice rumbled from the front of the room. "You're late." I couldn't help it. My eyes flicked upward, seeking the source of that voice. And there he was. Alpha King Kalen of Blackcrest. He was younger than I'd expected. Perhaps 30, with broad shoulders and the coiled readiness of a predator. His hair was the color of midnight, falling just past his shoulders. But it was his eyes that held me, amber and gold, like sunlight through whiskey. They were fixed on my father with cold intensity. My wolf, dormant for so long I sometimes forgot she existed, stirred uneasily within me. "1,000 apologies, Your Majesty," my father said, bowing low. The mountain pass was difficult to navigate. Kalen didn't acknowledge the excuse. Instead, those golden eyes shifted to me, sweeping my form in one dismissive glance. "So, this is your offering." His voice was flat, unimpressed. I felt my cheeks flush with humiliation. An offering. A thing. Not even worth the courtesy of being addressed directly. My father nudged me forward. "My daughter, Serena, as agreed in our treaty." Kalen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those amber depths. Displeasure? Disappointment? "She's human," he stated. "She's wolf-born," my father corrected hastily. "She simply doesn't shift." A murmur rippled through the court. I kept my eyes downcast, my face burning. The shame I'd lived with my entire life, now on display for the entire Blackcrest court to whisper about. "A defective wolf," said a cold female voice from somewhere to Kalen's right. How fitting that Silver Hollow would offer such a gift. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. I would not cry. Not here. Not in front of them. "She's pure-blooded," my father insisted, "of the Alpha line. Her bloodline is impeccable, even if she herself is limited." Limited. A kind word for what they all thought. Useless. Worthless. A disgrace. "Remove her restraints," Kalen ordered suddenly. A beta approached me with a key, unlocking the silver handcuffs. They fell away, leaving red marks on my wrists where they'd been. "Look at me," Kaelin commanded. I raised my head slowly, meeting those amber eyes directly for the first time. Something passed between us. A current, a shock of awareness. I watched his pupils dilate slightly, his nostrils flare, then his expression hardened, and the moment passed. "The treaty specified a mate bond," he said, turning back to my father. "How do you propose that happens with a woman who can't shift?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "The mating mark should still take," he said. "Her body will accept it, even if she can't reciprocate in wolf form." I swallowed hard. The mating mark. The bite that would bind me to this stranger forever. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it discussed so clinically made my stomach turn. "And if it doesn't?" Kaelin pressed. "Then she is still yours," my father said simply. "To do with as you please." I closed my eyes briefly. There it was. The truth of my situation, laid bare. I wasn't a bride. I was a possession. A pawn in a political game. Kaelin studied me for another long moment. I forced myself to maintain eye contact, though every instinct screamed at me to look away from an alpha's direct gaze. "Very well," he said finally. "I accept your offering. The treaty stands." Relief visibly washed over my father's face. "Thank you, Your Majesty. You won't regret this alliance. For your sake, I hope not." Kaelin's voice was like ice. "The ceremony will take place at moonrise tomorrow. Until then, Lady Serena will be shown to her quarters." He looked at me again. "I trust you'll find them comfortable, if not familiar." I said nothing, unsure if I was permitted to speak. "You may answer your king," the cold female voice prompted. "Thank you, Your Majesty," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Kaelin nodded once, then turned to a stern-looking woman nearby. "Lyra will show you to your rooms. I suggest you rest. Tomorrow will be demanding." The way he said it sent another chill through me. What exactly did demanding mean in the court of the most ruthless alpha king in generations? As I followed the woman called Lyra from the throne room, I felt my father's eyes on my back. He wouldn't be staying for the ceremony. His part in this transaction was complete. He'd delivered the goods, me, and secured his peace treaty. There was nothing left for him here. I didn't look back. My chambers were luxurious, if austere. Dark wood furniture, heavy velvet draperies, a bed large enough for 3 people, a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. A warm bath had been drawn, and clean clothes laid out, a simple white shift for sleeping, and an elaborate gown of deep blue for the ceremony tomorrow. No one had asked my size, yet everything fit perfectly. After bathing away the dust of travel, I sat by the window, gazing out at the moonlight playing over the jagged mountains surrounding Blackcrest Palace. So different from the gentle rolling hills and silver-leafed forests of my home. Home. The word brought a hollow ache to my chest. Silver Hollow had never truly been home. I'd never belonged there, never been accepted. The Alpha's broken daughter, hidden away like a shameful secret until she became useful as a bargaining chip. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Enter," I called, assuming it was a servant with my evening meal. Instead, a young woman slipped inside, closing the door quickly behind her. She was perhaps my age, 20 or so, with copper-colored hair and bright green eyes. Not a servant, judging by her fine clothing. "Lady Serena?" she whispered, glancing nervously at the door. "I'm Alara." I stood, uncertain. "Should you be here?" She shook her head. "Probably not, but I had to meet you." She came closer, her eyes wide and curious. "Is it true? You cannot shift?" I stiffened. So that's what this was. Curiosity about the freak. "If you've come to gawk," I began coldly. "No," she exclaimed, looking genuinely distressed. "I didn't mean... It's just... You're brave." That startled a laugh from me. Brave? I'm a prisoner. A peace offering. There's nothing brave about being handed over like property. Alara bit her lip. "Perhaps. But facing Kaelin as you did, that took courage. Most wolves can't even meet his eyes without cowering." I thought of those amber eyes, the strange jolt I'd felt when our gazes met. "He's just a man," I said, though we both knew that wasn't true. Alpha kings were more than men. They were power incarnate. "He's a monster," Alara whispered, her voice dropping even lower. "They call him the Butcher King for a reason." I'd heard the stories. Everyone had. How Kalen had slaughtered his own father to take the throne. How he'd decimated 3 rival packs who refused to bend the knee. How he'd once ripped a challenger apart with his bare hands while in human form, just to prove he could. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, a tremor in my voice despite my best efforts. Alara's eyes softened with pity. "Because you should know what you're facing. The servants' talk. The ceremony tomorrow night. It won't be just a formal marking." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "It's the old way. The brutal way." She looked away. "The marking happens during the consummation, before the entire court." The room seemed to spin around me. "What?" I gasped. "That's barbaric." "It's tradition," Alara said quietly. "One Kalen has revived to remind everyone of the old strength, to prove he fears nothing, not even vulnerability." I sank onto the edge of the bed, my knees suddenly too weak to support me. I'd prepared myself for a public ceremony, even for a public marking. Such things were common enough. But this— "Why are you telling me this?" I asked again, my voice small. "Because no one else will," she replied simply, "and because you deserve a chance to prepare yourself." She moved toward the door, then paused. "I've left a draft in your bathing chamber. It will help. With the pain." With that, she was gone, slipping out as quietly as she'd come, leaving me alone with this new horror to contemplate. I didn't cry. I hadn't cried since I was 12 years old, when I'd finally accepted that my wolf would never emerge, that I would always be incomplete. But in that moment, alone in my gilded prison, I came very close. Instead, I walked to the window again, staring up at the moon, nearly full, but not quite. Tomorrow night, it would be at its peak, and so would my nightmare. Unless— my gaze shifted to the mountains, dark and forbidding. No one escaped Blackcrest. Everyone knew that. The terrain was too harsh, the king's trackers too skilled. But no one who'd tried had been like me. No one had been scentless, a ghost among wolves. My greatest shame had always been my inability to shift, to be a proper wolf. But perhaps, just this once, it could be my salvation. By the time the moon reached its zenith, I had made my decision. I would not be Kalen's sacrifice. I would not be anyone's pawn any longer. I waited until the palace settled into the quiet of deep night. Then, wrapping myself in the darkest cloak I could find in the wardrobe, I slipped out of my chambers and into the shadowed corridors beyond. Freedom or death. Either seemed preferable to what awaited me at moonrise tomorrow. The palace was a labyrinth of dark corridors and hidden passages. Twice I had to duck into alcoves to avoid patrolling guards. My heart hammered in my chest, so loud I was certain any shifter within 100 paces could hear it. But my lack of scent proved an unexpected advantage. Without it, the guards had no way to detect my presence unless they saw or heard me directly. I had studied the layout of the palace from my window earlier, noting the positions of the guard towers and the main gate, too heavily guarded. But on the eastern side, the palace backed directly against the mountain, with a small servants' entrance that seemed less well watched. That was my target. I crept through the kitchens, keeping to the shadows, grateful for the few hours of sleep most of the inhabitants were taking before the pre-dawn preparations began. Just a little further, and I would reach the eastern door. The night air hit me like a slap when I finally pushed through the heavy wooden door. Cold, thin mountain air that burned my lungs. I pulled my cloak tighter and began to move quickly along the wall, heading for the tree line 100 yards away. 50 yards. 30. I was going to make it. Then a low growl stopped me in my tracks. Slowly I turned. A massive black wolf stood behind me, its amber eyes gleaming in the moonlight. The same amber eyes I'd stared into earlier. Kalen. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't outrun a wolf, especially not an alpha king in his prime. I couldn't fight him. I had nothing to bargain with. I was caught. The wolf prowled toward me, its movements liquid grace and barely contained power. I should have been terrified, and I was, but I was also strangely mesmerized. He was beautiful in this form, terrible and magnificent. When he was just a few feet away, the air around him shimmered, and the wolf was gone. In its place stood Kalen, completely naked, his human form every bit as imposing as his wolf. I quickly averted my eyes, my cheeks burning despite my fear. "Going somewhere, little ghost?" His voice was deceptively soft. "I needed air," I lied, knowing it was futile. He laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "Try again. And look at me when you lie to your king. I raised my eyes to his face, careful to keep them there. I can't do this, I said, honesty spilling out despite myself. I can't be what you want, what this treaty demands. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, at my directness. What I want, he said slowly, is irrelevant, as is what you want. This is about duty, obligation, the needs of our people. Our people? I laughed bitterly. I have no people. Silver Hollow rejected me long ago, and Blackcrest will never accept me. I'm nothing to either kingdom. He studied me for a long moment. You're wrong, he said finally. You're everything to both kingdoms now. You're the physical embodiment of peace between longtime enemies. I'm a sacrifice, I corrected. A convenient way for my father to be rid of his embarrassment while gaining political advantage. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. Is that what you believe? That he sent you here to die? Not to die, I said quietly. Just to disappear. To be your problem instead of his. The Alpha King was silent for several heartbeats, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body in the cold night air. And what if I told you, he said, his voice low, that I specifically requested you? I blinked, certain I'd misheard. What? The treaty did not originally include a mate bond, Kaelin continued. It was a standard peace agreement. Land concessions, trade guarantees, military alliance. I was the one who demanded more, who demanded you. My mind reeled. That's impossible. You didn't even know me. I knew enough. His gaze was intense, searching. The scentless daughter of Silver Hollow. The Alpha's child who couldn't shift. Stories reach even a king's ears. Why would you want someone defective? I whispered, the word bitter on my tongue. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Don't use that word again, he commanded, his voice suddenly hard. Not about yourself. Not in my presence. I flinched, taking an involuntary step back. He noticed, and something like regret crossed his features. Come, he said more gently. It's too cold for this conversation, and you're shaking. I was, though whether from cold or fear, I couldn't say. Am I your prisoner now? I asked, my voice small. Kaelin sighed. You were never not my prisoner, little ghost. But if you're asking if I'll punish you for this escape attempt, no. I understand fear better than most. Without warning, he shifted back into his wolf form, the transformation fluid and seamless in a way that stirred old envy deep in my chest. Then he nudged my hand with his massive head, gesturing toward the palace with a tilt of his muzzle. The message was clear. We're going back. Now. I had no choice but to follow. Dawn was breaking by the time we returned to my chambers. Kaelin had shifted back to human form once we were inside the palace, and a servant had appeared with a robe for him as if by magic. Now he stood by the window, gazing out at the lightening sky, while I sat perched tensely on the edge of the bed. The ceremony will proceed as planned, he said finally, turning to face me. At moonrise tonight. My heart sank, so my attempt had changed nothing. I've heard rumors, I said carefully, about what the ceremony entails. His expression hardened. Alara visited you? It wasn't a question. She was trying to help, I said quickly, not wanting to get the girl in trouble. Help, he repeated, the words sharp with scorn. By filling your head with fear. Was she wrong? I challenged, surprising myself with my boldness. Will I not be claimed before the entire court? Kaelin's jaw tightened. It is tradition. It's barbaric, I said, echoing my words to Alara. It's necessary, he countered. My position is precarious. My father's supporters still whisper that I am unworthy of the throne, that I lack the strength, the conviction to rule as he did. This ceremony will silence them. At my expense, I said quietly. His eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw something there. Not the cold calculation of a king, but something almost human. Regret, perhaps. Or sympathy. Yes, he acknowledged. At your expense. And mine. Neither of us has the luxury of privacy or dignity in this. We are symbols before we are people. I looked away, unable to bear the weight of his gaze. I don't know if I can do it. You can, he said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. And you will. Because the alternative is war. Bloodshed. Death on a scale neither of us wants to imagine. He was right, of course. That was the cruelest part of all this. My humiliation, my suffering, was a small price to pay for peace. Wasn't that what I'd been told my entire life? that my only value lay in what I could provide others. "There is something I can offer you," Kalen said after a moment. "A small mercy, perhaps." I looked up, wary. "What?" "The public ceremony will happen. The claiming, the marking. It must be real, and it must be witnessed." He paused. "But we can complete the act in private beforehand, so that when we stand before the court, it will be a performance more than a violation." I stared at him, trying to process what he was offering. "You would do that?" A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Contrary to what you may have heard, I am not a monster who enjoys the suffering of innocence, especially not one who is to be my queen." Queen. The word felt surreal. I'd never expected to be anyone's mate, let alone a queen. My defects had ensured that no wolf in Silver Hollow would ever consider me suitable. "Why me?" I asked suddenly. "Of all the women you could have demanded, why the one wolf who can't shift, who has no scent? It makes no sense." Kalen was silent for so long I thought he might not answer. Then, "Because of those very things," he said. "Because you are unique, different. Because you have survived in a world that rejected you and emerged stronger for it." I laughed incredulously. "Stronger? I'm broken." "No." His voice was firm. "You're adapted. The world tried to break you, but you found another way to be. That's not weakness, Serena. That's evolution." The way he said my name, the first time he'd used it, sent an odd shiver through me. "You don't even know me," I said softly. "I know enough," he replied, echoing his words from earlier. "And I will learn more, as will you. We have a lifetime for that. A lifetime." The reality of it washed over me again. This man, this dangerous, powerful Alpha King, would be my mate until death. There was no escape, no reprieve, only adaptation, as he'd put it. "I accept your offer," I said finally. "The private completion, before the ceremony." Kalen nodded, his expression solemn. "I'll come to you an hour before moonrise." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Serena," I looked up. "Don't try to run again, for both our sakes." After he was gone, I stood at the window for a long time, watching the sun climb higher over the jagged mountains. My prison, my kingdom, my future. I had lost everything. My home, my freedom, my choice. But perhaps in some small way, I had gained something too. A strange respect from the Alpha King. A tiny measure of control over my fate. It wasn't much. But for someone who had been nothing her entire life, it was something. Moonrise was coming. And with it, the beginning of whatever I was about to become. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. Servants came and went, filling the bathing chamber with steaming water infused with herbs and oils, laying out jewelry and cosmetics on the vanity, all avoiding my gaze as if my fate was something shameful, something they couldn't bear to acknowledge. When the door opened again, I expected more silent servants. Instead, a tall, imposing woman strode in. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled into a severe knot, and her amber eyes, so similar to Kalen's, assessed me coolly. "Lady Serena," she said, her voice rich and commanding. "I am Queen Mother Rhiannon, Kalen's mother." I rose hastily and attempted an awkward curtsy. "Your Majesty," she waved off the formality. "We'll dispense with that. Soon enough you'll hold the title I once did." And she circled me slowly, her gaze critical. "You're not what I expected." "I rarely am," I replied, surprising myself with the hint of defiance. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Good. You'll need that spine of steel to survive here." She stopped her circling and faced me directly. "My son is complicated. He does what he believes necessary for our people, even at great personal cost. Remember that when you think him cruel." I wasn't sure how to respond. Was she warning me? Apologizing for what was to come? Or simply stating facts? "I'll try," I said finally. Rhiannon studied me a moment longer. "You have no scent," she observed. Fascinating, and yet not entirely true. She leaned closer, inhaling deeply. "There's something there. Very faint. Like mountain air after a storm. Curious." I stared at her in shock. No one had ever detected any scent from me. Not my father, not our pack healer. No one. "You're mistaken," I said. "I've never had a scent." "I'm rarely mistaken," she replied with quiet confidence. "But perhaps it doesn't matter. What matters is that you survive tonight, that you endure." A chill ran down my spine at her words. "The ceremony? The ceremony is just the beginning." Her eyes held a warning. Blackcrest Court is a battlefield, child, and you've just been thrust onto its front lines. I never wanted this war, I said quietly. None of us choose our battles. We only choose how we fight them. She moved toward the door. The servants will help you prepare. Try to eat something beforehand. You'll need your strength. As she reached for the door handle, I found my voice again. Queen Mother? She paused, looking back. Why did he really choose me? Kaelin. Why me specifically? Rhiannon's expression was unreadable. That is a question only my son can answer. But know this. Kaelin does nothing without purpose. Nothing without calculation. She paused. And he has never taken what was not already his. With that cryptic statement, she left me alone with my confusion and mounting anxiety. The servants bathed me in water scented with lavender and rosemary, dried my skin with soft cloths, and dressed me in a gossamer-thin shift of pale blue silk. My hair was brushed until it shone like polished mahogany, then left loose down my back. A delicate silver circlet was placed on my head, and a matching bracelet encircled my wrist. For the public ceremony later, we'll dress you in the formal gown, explained one of the servant girls, the only one who seemed willing to speak to me. This is for His Majesty's private audience. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. My stomach was a knot of nerves. I'd never been with a man before, had never expected to be, given my defects. And now my first experience would be with an alpha king who'd demanded me as part of a peace treaty. A man who'd spent his life surrounded by willing, beautiful wolf women. The irony was almost enough to make me laugh. Almost. When the servants left, I paced the room, my bare feet silent on the thick carpets. The sky outside was turning dusky, the sun slipping behind the mountains. Moonrise wasn't far off. A soft knock at the door made me freeze. "Enter," I called, my voice steadier than I felt. The door opened and Kaelin stood there, framed by the dying light. He wore simple black trousers and a loose white shirt, open at the throat. His dark hair was pulled back, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face. He looked younger somehow, less like a king, and more like a man. "Serena," he said, my name almost a caress on his lips. "Your Majesty," I replied, my mouth suddenly dry. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Kaelin," he corrected. "When we're alone, I am just Kaelin." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak again. He moved further into the room, his movements fluid and predatory even in human form. He stopped a few feet away from me, his amber eyes taking in the thin shift, the bare feet, the silver circlet. "You look beautiful," he said, and it sounded sincere. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling heat creep into my cheeks. Kaelin gestured to a small table by the window, where a servant had left wine and fruit. "Would you like something? It might help ease the tension." I shook my head. I'd rather have my wits about me. A smile touched his lips. Wise, perhaps. He poured a single glass for himself and took a small sip. "I want you to understand something, Serena. What happens between us tonight, what happens in this room, is not for the treaty, not for the court. It's for us." "For us," I repeated, uncertain. "Yes, the beginning of what will be a lifetime together." He set the glass down and moved closer, until he was standing directly in front of me. "I don't expect love from you. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. But I do hope for understanding. For partnership." His words surprised me. I'd expected demands, perhaps even threats. Not this vulnerability. "I'll try," I said, echoing my response to his mother. Kaelin raised a hand, hesitating for a moment before gently touching my cheek. His fingers were warm against my skin, the contact sending an unexpected shiver through me. "You're trembling," he observed. I swallowed, embarrassed. "This isn't something I thought I'd ever experience." His eyes softened. "Because of your inability to shift?" I nodded. "In Silver Hollow, that made me undesirable. Defect." I caught myself, remembering his earlier command. "Unworthy of mating." Anger flashed in his eyes. "Silver Hollow's loss," he said, his voice a low growl. "My gain." Before I could respond, he leaned down and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was gentle, almost cautious, a question more than a demand. I found myself responding instinctively, my lips moving against his, my hands coming up to rest against his chest. I could feel his heartbeat beneath my palm, steady and strong. When he pulled away, his eyes had darkened. The amber now shot through with gold. "Still afraid?" he asked softly. "Yes," I admitted. But not of you. Not in the way I was. He smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his face. Good. Fear has its place. But not between mates. Mates. The word hung between us, heavy with meaning. Soon, we would be bound in the most ancient and sacred way of our kind. Irreversible. Permanent. Kalen's hands moved to the ties of my shift. May I? He asked. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Slowly, reverently, he untied the delicate ribbons, letting the silk slide from my shoulders to pool at my feet. I fought the urge to cover myself, to hide from his gaze. Instead, I stood still, letting him look at me, all of me, for the first time. Perfect, he breathed, and the wonder in his voice made me believe it, if only for a moment. His hands were gentle as they explored my body, learning every curve, every hollow. His lips followed, trailing fire across my skin. I was surprised by my own responses, the way my breath caught, the way heat pooled low in my belly, the way my body arched toward his touch. When he lifted me and carried me to the bed, I went willingly. When he shed his own clothes and joined me there, I welcomed him. And when he finally claimed me, fully, completely, the pain I'd expected was overshadowed by something else entirely, something that felt dangerously close to belonging. Afterward, as we lay tangled in the sheets, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare shoulder, Kalen spoke again. The marking, he said quietly. It happens during the public ceremony. It will be intense, but know that I take no pleasure in your discomfort. I nodded against his chest. I understand. Do you? His voice held a note of wonder. I'm not sure I do, and I've had years to prepare for this moment. I lifted my head to look at him. What do you mean? Kalen was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. There's something about you, Serena. Something I can't quite define. From the moment I first heard about you, the wolf who couldn't shift, the alpha's daughter without a scent, I knew you were important. To your political strategy, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. No. His eyes met mine, intense and searching. To me. Before I could process that statement, a knock came at the door. Kalen tensed, then sighed. It's time, he said, regret coloring his tone. The moon is rising. The great hall was packed with members of Kalen's court, their faces blurring together as I was led toward the dais at the far end. I wore the formal gown now, a creation of midnight blue silk and silver thread that whispered against the stone floor as I walked. My hair had been partially braided and adorned with tiny silver stars. I looked like a queen. I felt like a sacrifice. Kalen awaited me on the dais, resplendent in formal black and silver, a mirror to my own attire. His crown, a deceptively simple band of dark metal set with a single amber stone, gleamed in the torchlight. As I approached, the murmurs of the court fell away, leaving an expectant silence. I kept my gaze forward, refusing to acknowledge the hunger in their eyes. They had come to witness a spectacle, a claiming, a reminder of their alpha's dominance. When I reached Kalen, he extended his hand. I placed mine in his, surprised by how steady it was. His fingers closed around mine, warm and reassuring. Together, he murmured so quietly only I could hear. The ceremony itself was a blur of ancient words and ritual movements. The court priest spoke of bonds unbreakable, of bloodlines joined, of peace secured through union. Wine was shared from a single goblet, ancient vows repeated, a ribbon wound around our joined hands. And then came the moment the court had truly been waiting for, the claiming, the mark. Kalen turned to face me, his eyes searching mine for a moment before he spoke. By the light of the full moon, he intoned, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. I claim you as mine, my mate, my queen, my equal. Equal. The word sent a shock through me. No one had ever considered me equal to anything. Then Kalen's hands were at the shoulders of my gown, pulling it down just enough to expose the curve where neck met shoulder, the traditional site of the mating mark. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for what was to come. I felt Kalen's breath against my skin, heard the collective intake of breath from the watching court, then pain, sharp, burning pain, as his teeth sank into my flesh. Not in wolf form, as was customary, but as a man. It made the mark no less powerful, no less binding. I gasped, my knees threatening to buckle, but Kalen's arm wrapped around my waist, holding me upright. The pain intensified, spreading like fire through my veins as the ancient magic of the mating bond took hold. And then, something unexpected. A warmth. A presence in the back of my mind where there had only ever been emptiness before. Kalen. I could feel him, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. When he finally released me, drawing back with my blood staining his lips, his eyes were wide with shock. Whatever he'd felt, it had surprised him too. The bond is sealed, the priest declared. What the moon has witnessed, let no mortal challenge. Hail to Alpha King Kalen and his mate, Queen Serena of Blackcrest. The court erupted in cheers and howls, the traditional response to a mating ceremony, but I barely heard them. I was too focused on the new presence in my mind, the echo of Kalen's emotions mingling with my own. Surprise, wonder, satisfaction, and underneath it all a current of something darker, something I couldn't quite name. "It's done," Kalen said, his voice low and intimate despite the crowd surrounding us. "You are mine now, and I am yours." Mine. The word resonated through me, triggering something primal and possessive I hadn't known existed within me. My hand lifted to the mark on my shoulder, still wet with blood. "I feel you," I whispered, confused and a little frightened. In my head, a smile curved his lips. "The mating bond. Stronger than I expected, given your unique nature. Is it supposed to be like this?" "Like what?" "So immediate. So intense." I struggled to find the right words. "Like I can feel your emotions alongside my own." Kalen's eyes widened fractionally. "You can feel what I'm feeling." I nodded, uncertain why this seemed to surprise him so much. He opened his mouth to say something more, but was interrupted by courtiers pressing forward with congratulations and pledges of loyalty. The moment was lost in the swirl of ceremony and celebration that followed. But as the night wore on, as we were paraded before the court, accepting pledges and sharing ceremonial wine, that presence remained. A constant awareness of Kalen, like a shadow at the edge of my consciousness. Sometimes, when our eyes met across the room, I could have sworn I caught flashes of his thoughts, fragments, impressions, gone too quickly to grasp. It was unsettling, intimate in a way I hadn't been prepared for, and judging by the occasional startled look Kalen sent my way, he was experiencing something similar. What had we done? What had this mating bond truly created between us? Hours later, when the celebration had finally wound down, and we'd been escorted back to the royal chambers, Kalen's chambers, which would now be mine as well, I found myself standing awkwardly in the center of a room that was unmistakably masculine in its furnishings. Dark woods, deep greens, furs and leathers. A king's sanctuary. Kalen dismissed the servants with a wave, waiting until the door closed behind them before turning to me. "You should rest," he said. "It's been a long day." I nodded, exhaustion hitting me suddenly. The emotional strain, the physical demands, the constant need to appear composed before the court. All of it had taken a toll. "The bond," I said, unable to let the question go. "Is it always like this? So, present?" Kalen's expression turned thoughtful. "No," he admitted. "Not in my experience, at least. Most mating bonds take time to develop, to deepen. What we're experiencing is unusual." "Because I'm defective?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. Anger flashed across his face, and I flinched, expecting a rebuke. Instead, he crossed the room in 2 quick strides and cupped my face in his hands. "Never say that," he said fiercely. "Never even think it. You are not defective. You are different, yes, unique, but that doesn't make you lesser. If anything..." He paused, his thumb stroking my cheeks gently. "If anything, it makes you more complex, more fascinating, more valuable." The intensity of his gaze, the conviction in his voice, made my breath catch. No one had ever spoken to me like this. No one had ever looked at me as if I were something precious, rather than something shameful. "Then why?" I whispered. "Why is the bond so strong, so fast?" Kalen shook his head slightly. "I don't know. But I intend to find out." He released me and stepped back. "Tomorrow. For now, we both need rest." He moved to a large wardrobe and pulled out a silk robe, offering it to me. "For sleeping," he explained, "unless you prefer nothing." A small smile played at his lips, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks, as I remembered our earlier encounter. "Thank you," I said, taking the robe. It would be enormous on me, but it was better than the formal gown I still wore. As if reading my thoughts, and perhaps he could now, Kaylin said, "I'll have proper clothes for you by tomorrow. Things in your size, your preference." I nodded, not sure what to say. No one had ever considered my preferences before. "The bathing chamber is through there," Kaylin continued, indicating a door to the left. "Take all the time you need." I retreated gratefully, eager for a moment alone to process everything that had happened. The bathing chamber was as luxurious as the rest of the royal suite, with a large sunken tub and an array of oils and soaps. I removed the formal gown and the elaborate jewelry, setting them aside carefully. As I caught sight of myself in a large mirror, my eyes were drawn to the mark on my shoulder. It was an angry red, the clear imprint of teeth surrounded by bruising, and yet, looking at it didn't fill me with the revulsion or resentment I'd expected. Instead, I felt a strange sense of pride, belonging. The bond was affecting me more than I'd realized. I bathed quickly, washing away the remnants of the day, then slipped into Kaylin's robe. It engulfed me, the sleeves falling past my fingertips, the hem pooling around my feet. But the silk was soft against my skin, and it smelled of him, that unique blend of pine, smoke, and something wild that I was beginning to recognize even without a shifter's enhanced senses. When I emerged from the bathing chamber, Kaylin was standing by the window, looking out at the moonlit mountains. He'd removed his formal attire, and now wore only loose black trousers, his chest and feet bare. The sight of him, the powerful lines of muscle, the scatter of dark hair across his chest, sent an unexpected heat through me. He turned as I entered, his eyes moving over me in the too large robe. Something softened in his expression. "It suits you," he said. I gave a small, disbelieving laugh. "It's enormous. And yet," he moved toward me, his movements as fluid as they'd been in wolf form. "It pleases me to see you in it, to see you marked as mine." The possessiveness in his tone should have alarmed me. Instead, it sent another wave of heat through my body, a response I couldn't control or understand. "The bond," I murmured. "It's affecting how I feel, isn't it?" Kaylin stopped just in front of me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his skin. "The bond doesn't create feelings, little ghost. It only amplifies what's already there." I frowned. "That can't be right. I've only just met you. I can't possibly what?" He prompted when I trailed off. "Want you." The words hovered unspoken between us, but somehow I knew he heard them anyway. Through the bond, perhaps, or simply through the flush that I could feel spreading across my cheeks. "It's late," he said, mercifully changing the subject. "And you're exhausted. We should sleep." He gestured toward the massive bed that dominated one side of the room. I moved toward it hesitantly, unsure of the protocol. Did he expect me to share it with him? Would we continue what we'd begun earlier? As if sensing my uncertainty, and again, perhaps he could, Kaylin said, "I'll take the couch tonight. Give you space to adjust." Relief and an odd disappointment warred within me. "You don't have to," I said, though I wasn't sure what I was offering instead. "I know." His smile was gentle. "But I think it's best. For both of us." He gathered a pillow and a fur throw from the bed. "Sleep well, Queen Serena." Queen. The title still felt foreign, impossible. I wasn't a queen. I was barely a wolf. And yet, here I stood, mated to the most powerful alpha king in the Western Territories, wearing his mark, feeling his presence in my mind. What did that make me? I climbed into the bed, sinking into its softness. Exhaustion claimed me almost immediately, pulling me toward sleep, but just before consciousness faded, I felt a gentle caress against my mind, a sensation I somehow knew was Kaylin, checking on me through our new bond. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel quite so alone. I awoke to sunlight streaming through tall windows and the disorienting sensation of unfamiliar surroundings. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The ceremony, the marking, the bond, Kaylin. I sat up, scanning the room quickly. I was alone. The couch where Kaylin had said he would sleep showed signs of use. A rumpled throw, an indentation in the pillow, but he was nowhere to be seen. As I climbed out of bed, I noticed a change of clothes laid out on a nearby chair. Simple trousers and a tunic in soft, muted colors, along with undergarments and soft leather boots. all in my size as promised. I dressed quickly, grateful for the practical clothing after the elaborate ceremony gown. As I finished lacing the boots, a knock came at the door. "Enter," I called, assuming it was a servant. Instead, Alara slipped inside, her copper hair gleaming in the morning light. "Queen Serena," she said, dropping into a quick curtsy. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I assured her, surprised but pleased to see a familiar face. "And please, it's just Serena, at least when we're alone." She smiled, relaxing slightly. "How are you feeling after—" She gestured vaguely, her eyes flicking to the mark visible above the collar of my tunic. "I'm fine," I said, my hand rising unconsciously to touch the mark. It was not as bad as I feared. Relief crossed her features. "Good. I was worried when I heard about the strength of the bond. It's all anyone can talk about this morning." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Alara's eyes widened. "You don't know? The way the mark took? The intensity of the bond. It was visible to everyone in the hall. A golden light surrounded you both when the king bit you. They're calling it a true mate bond." True mate bond. The word sent a chill through me. I'd heard of such things, of course. Rare, powerful connections between wolves who were, in some cosmic sense, made for each other. But they were mostly legends. Stories told to pups around the fire. "That's impossible," I said. "I can't even shift. I can't be anyone's true mate, let alone an Alpha King's." Alara shrugged. "I'm just telling you what everyone is saying, and what we all saw." She paused. "The king left early this morning. He asked me to tell you he had urgent business to attend to, but would return by midday. He also asked that you remain in the royal quarters until then. My first day as queen, and already I was being confined to quarters." "Did he say why?" "No," Alara admitted, "but there's been unrest since the ceremony. Not everyone is happy about the alliance with Silverhollow, or about having a queen who can't shift. Of course, I should have expected resistance. Politics rarely proceeded smoothly, especially when it involved longtime enemies suddenly becoming allies." "I see," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. I'd hoped to explore the palace, to learn more about my new home. "Well, I suppose I have plenty to occupy me here." Alara hesitated, then said, "If you'd like, I could stay, keep you company, answer any questions you might have about Blackcrest." The offer surprised me. "Wouldn't that get you in trouble?" "If the king ordered me to stay here alone—" "He didn't specify alone," she countered with a small smile. "Just that you remain in the royal quarters. Besides, I serve the queen now. You." The thought was bewildering. I'd never had anyone serve me before. In Silverhollow, I'd been barely tolerated, let alone respected. "I'd appreciate the company," I said sincerely. "Thank you." Alara's smile widened. "Wonderful. I'll have breakfast sent up and then we can talk. There's so much you should know about the court, about the people here, especially now." As she moved to pull a cord that would summon a servant, I caught her arm gently. "Alara, why are you being so kind to me? You don't know me. I'm from a kingdom your people have hated for generations." She looked at me for a long moment, her green eyes thoughtful. "Because I know what it's like to be the outsider," she said finally. "To be different in a way others don't understand." She paused. "And because I believe in what the king is trying to do. This peace, this alliance, it's important. It's necessary." Before I could ask what she meant by being different, she pulled away and rang for the servant. Minutes later, a breakfast tray arrived, laden with fruits, bread, and a pot of fragrant tea. As we ate, Alara began to tell me about life in Blackcrest, the various noble families and their alliances, the court customs, the places within the palace I might enjoy visiting. She was a natural storyteller, bringing the unfamiliar world to life with her vivid descriptions and occasional humor. "And whatever you do," she was saying, "avoid Lord Thorne's youngest son at all costs. He fancies himself a poet and will corner you for hours with the most dreadful verses about your eyes or hair or whatever feature has caught his fancy that day." I laughed, feeling more relaxed than I had in days. "I'll keep that in mind." "What about Queen Mother Rhiannon? Where does she fit in the court dynamics?" Alara's expression sobered. "The Queen Mother is complex. She wields significant influence, especially among the older noble houses who remember her husband's reign. She supported Kaelin when he challenged his father for the throne, which surprised everyone, but her loyalty shouldn't be taken for granted. She visited me, I said. Before the ceremony. She said something strange, that she could detect a scent from me. Faint, but there. Alara's eyes widened. Really? That's unusual. Queen Rhiannon does have an exceptional sense of smell, even for a shifter. If anyone could detect something others missed, it would be her. But I've never had a scent, I insisted. It's part of my condition. Maybe it's changing, Alara suggested. The bond with Kaelin might be affecting you in ways we don't understand yet. I considered this. Could the mating bond be altering something fundamental about me? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. There's so much I don't know, I admitted. About being a queen, about being a mate, about Blackcrest. I feel completely unprepared. Alara reached across the table and squeezed my hand. No one is ever prepared for the role they're thrust into. You learn as you go, and you have allies here. She smiled. Me, for one. I returned her smile, grateful for the unexpected friendship. Thank you, Alara. A commotion in the corridor outside interrupted me. Raised voices, the sound of running feet. Alara and I exchanged alarmed glances just as the door burst open. A guard stood there, his face pale with urgency. My queen, he said, the title still unfamiliar to my ears. You must come quickly. It's the king. My heart lurched. What's happened? Is he hurt? No, my queen. But there's been an attempt on his life, and the assassin. The guard hesitated. What? I demanded, already on my feet. He bears the mark of Silverhollow. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Silverhollow. My former home. My father's kingdom. Had the peace treaty been a ruse all along? A way to get close to Kaelin? To strike at the heart of Blackcrest? Or was something more sinister at play? Either way, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My brief honeymoon period as Queen of Blackcrest was over. The real test was just beginning. Take me to him, I commanded, surprised by the authority in my own voice. The guard hesitated. The king ordered that you remain in the royal quarters, Your Majesty. And now I'm ordering you to take me to my mate, I countered. Through our new bond, I could sense Kaelin's emotions, a storm of anger and frustration. We followed the guard through winding corridors until we reached iron doors leading to the dungeon. Inside stood Kaelin, addressing his warriors. Beyond them, chained to a cell wall, was a bloodied prisoner. Kaelin turned sharply. I told you to remain in our chambers. I felt your distress, I said simply. After dismissing his warriors, Kaelin approached me. You shouldn't be here. I'm your mate, I reminded him. Your queen. If there's been an attempt on your life, I should know. He showed me a dagger bearing Silverhollow's emblem. The assassin carried this, along with a letter bearing your father's seal. My blood ran cold. That could mean anything. It could, Kaelin agreed. But coupled with an assassination attempt on the morning after our mating ceremony, the implications seem clear. Let me speak with him, I said suddenly. Kaelin's eyebrows rose. The assassin? Absolutely not. I might recognize something that could tell us who sent him, I insisted. Reluctantly, he allowed it. As I approached the prisoner, he looked at me with hatred. You're her, the abomination, the wolf who can't shift. Who sent you? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He laughed bitterly. Your father is weak, a coward who would sell his own daughter for a false peace. Lord Darien sends his regards, the assassin continued. He says your death will follow your mates. Lord Darien, my uncle who had always coveted my father's throne. He's planning a coup, I realized aloud. He'll use the chaos of war with Blackcrest to overthrow my father. I was never meant to succeed, the assassin admitted. Only to be caught, to deliver the message, to start the war. Ice spread through my veins. The real attack was yet to come. A coup in Silverhollow, followed by a war orchestrated by my uncle. We need to warn my father, I told Kaelin. If Darien succeeds, you'll face a much more aggressive enemy. In the war room, Kaelin's advisors reacted with skepticism to my explanation. And we're supposed to believe this on your word alone? Lord Thorne asked. The word of a Silverhollow wolf? I am now mated to your king, I replied. My loyalty is to him, and to Blackcrest. And I know my uncle. This plot fits his character perfectly. Queen Mother Rhiannon later approached us privately. The traitor within our walls is Thorne's youngest son, Alaric. He disappeared after the assassination attempt. If he's fled, he'll warn Darien that we know his plans, Kaelin said frustratedly. Not necessarily. I said. An idea forming. What if we make a show of preparing for war publicly, while secretly warning my father? I'll go, I volunteered when we discussed messengers. Absolutely not, Kaelin refused. It's too dangerous. It makes perfect sense, I argued. Who would suspect the new Queen of Blackcrest? And I know the secret passages in my father's castle. Despite his protests, I convinced Kaelin to let me go, with his warriors as guards, and himself accompanying me to the border. That night, as we lay together, he revealed a secret. 5 years ago, a wolf prophet told me my true mate would come bearing no scent, unable to shift, he admitted. That she would end generations of bloodshed between our kingdoms. Stunned, I asked, "You knew we were true mates?" "I suspected," he corrected. "I couldn't be certain until our bond formed. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Or thought it another manipulation?" He was right. I wouldn't have believed him. We traveled swiftly to the Silver Hollow border, where I left Kaelin with a promise to return. 3 days, he warned. "If you're not back, I'm coming for you." With 2 warriors, I approached my childhood home. At the eastern wall, I told them to wait, while I used a secret passage known only to me. Inside my father's study, I overheard him arguing with Darian about war with Blackcrest. To my relief, my father resisted the idea. "I never wanted war," he was saying. "The alliance was meant to bring peace." I stepped into the room. "Neither of you needs to pay that price." Both men turned to me in shock. "Serena?" My father gasped. "She's supposed to be in Blackcrest," Darian hissed. "A prisoner or a corpse by now." "I am Queen of Blackcrest," I declared. "And I've come with a warning. Your assassin failed, and we know of your plot to start a war so you can stage a coup." "Lies," Darian drew his dagger. "She's been corrupted by the Butcher King." My father raised a hand. "Let her speak." As I explained Darian's treachery, his face contorted with rage. He lunged at me, and though I dodged, his dagger caught my side. Through our bond, I felt Kaelin's alarm. My father shifted, attacking Darian. Their fight was brief and vicious, ending with Darian dead and my father gravely wounded. Together, we staggered to the secret passage as Darian's conspirators stormed the castle. Outside, Kaelin's warriors helped us onto horses. The journey back was a blur of pain. I awoke in Kaelin's arms at the border, his face twisted with fear. "I came back," I whispered. "Like I promised." "Hold on," he pleaded. "Just hold on." 3 days later, I woke in our bed at Blackcrest, Kaelin beside me. "My father?" I asked immediately. "Recovering," Kaelin assured me. "His loyal supporters have secured the castle. Darian's conspirators have been captured or killed. The alliance? Stronger than ever," he said. "Your father has publicly declared you his heir, the future Alpha Queen of Silverhollow and Blackcrest both." I blinked in surprise. "But I can't shift. I'm perfect," Kaelin interrupted, his fingers tracing my cheek. "As you are, as you've always been." Tears filled my eyes as his lips met mine, our bond humming with shared emotions. Love, relief, hope for the future. Outside our window, wolves from both kingdoms mingled in the courtyard, former enemies becoming allies. The prophecy was fulfilled. I, the wolf who couldn't shift, had brought peace to generations of bloodshed, not through weakness, but through strength, not through submission, but through courage. And as Kaelin drew me closer, his heart beating strong against mine, I realized that what had once been my greatest shame had become my greatest gift. I wasn't defective. I was different. I was exactly as I was meant to be. 1 year later, snow fell softly on the great courtyard between the twin castles. Where once stood a heavily guarded border, now a bridge connected Blackcrest and Silverhollow, a symbol of the lasting union between the kingdoms. From the balcony, I watched wolves playing in the fresh snow, some in human form, others as wolves, with no distinction of origin or territory. Children from both realms built snow fortifications together, their laughter echoing through the valley. "They're waiting for you," Kaelin said, approaching silently behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist. I leaned back against his chest, feeling the strength and warmth of him. "Are they ready, do you think? For their queen?" "Always." Below us, my father stood with Queen Mother Rhiannon, their former animosity replaced by cautious respect. Alara was there too, supervising a group of young shifters, including several who, like me, couldn't transform. After my return from Silver Hollow, something unexpected happened. Young wolves with shifting difficulties from both kingdoms began to appear at our court, drawn by stories of the queen who couldn't shift, but had saved 2 realms. Our legacy, Kaelin murmured, following my gaze to the children. A better one than war, I replied, placing my hand over his. We descended to join the celebration marking 1 year of true peace. As we walked among our people, I no longer felt the weight of judgment or shame. What had once been considered my greatest weakness had become the bridge between 2 worlds. When my father embraced me before the assembled crowd, I saw genuine pride in his eyes. He had learned, perhaps too late but sincerely, that strength came in many forms. Later, as music filled the great hall and wolves from both kingdoms danced together, Kaelin pulled me close. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Being forced to marry the rival Alpha King?" I smiled up at him, our bond humming with shared emotion. "I wasn't forced," I reminded him. "I was guided to exactly where I was meant to be." His kiss tasted of promise and future. In the eyes of our people, we were no longer the Butcher King and the Broken Wolf, but simply Kaelin and Serena, the mates who had transformed hatred into harmony. And in this harmony, we had found something neither of us had dared to hope for: home. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.